The next segment of our program is called the Community Moment. It's an opportunity for someone from our community to come and share some thoughts that they have, something interesting that they may have read or something that they want to tell us about. Today's Community Moment presenter is Joshua Richards, who will be telling us about St. Sturgill's Sacrament this week for our Community Moment. So he's someone we all know. Please welcome back Joshua Richards.
I don't know how to follow that, so all right, we're just going to try. It was the modern-day prophet and contemporary country music savior, Sturgill Simpson, who wrote that every time I take a look inside that old fabled book, I'm blinded and reminded by some pain caused by an old man in the sky. Marijuana, LSD, psilocybin, DMT, they all change the way I see, but love's the only thing that saved my life. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to just regale you with my own personal tales taking hallucinogens, and I was reminded that Houston Oasis does indeed abide by all local and state and federal laws, and I can't encourage you to break those either. So I'm going to be short today, and I want to talk to you about a book called Changing Your Mind by Michael Pollan. I think Eric talked a little about this once when we kind of broke up and let a few different people share little things, but I wanted to share some of my takeaways and why I think they're more important than my own anecdotes. But if you want to hear a great story about why the Papa John's in Deer Park will not deliver pizzas to my parents' address, go ahead and find me at the coffee break, and there's a lovely story I'd love to tell you. Okay. Michael Pollan normally writes about food and food history, but he wrote this book, Changing Your Mind. It recently came out. Psychedelics have been used for thousands and thousands of years in aesthetic and religious ceremonies, yet in the 1950s and 60s, they were able to break out of the laboratories, and the counterculture popularized their use for recreation. Albert Hofmann is famous for synthesizing lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. Sasha Shulgin was able to synthesize phenethylamines, MDMA, and about 600 other research chemicals. Go ahead and Google that later. It's fun stuff to read on. I will personally say that much like Nebraska's state motto goes, psychedelics are not for everyone. But the research in the book is what I found most interesting. The book primarily deals with these cases of people taking therapeutic doses of psilocybe cubensis mushrooms. These are preferable to other chemicals like LSD because magic mushrooms are potent in doses in the size of grams, and the trip lasts 3 to 6 hours. Things like LSD and mescaline analogs are potent in micrograms, notoriously hard to weigh, and the trips last anywhere from 12 to 18 hours. Okay. It is true that there is a lot of controversy surrounding the use of psychedelics in therapy because there's a lot of mental disorders and neurological disorders that don't play well with them, schizophrenia being one. However, for those that don't suffer from a narrow band of serious mental and neurological issues, there is an immense value that a lot of doctors and therapists are coming to see for their patients. Some of the issues that they treat are addiction, psychospiritual traumas such as dying of an incurable illness and knowing that, severe PTSD, and treatment-resistant depression. It might sound kind of odd that you would give somebody who's addicted to a drug like meth or heroin or cocaine another drug like mushrooms to help them get over that, yet there is a growing amount of research supporting this claim. There's not a lot of longitudinal studies where you can have somebody continually given an illegal drug and then you give them another illegal drug to help them get off that. However, as more states begin to loosen their laws, more research is pouring in. One of the studies that I really loved in the book is in its second phase at New York University, and it doesn't deal with hardcore drugs, but it deals with cigarettes. Chantix it boasts a success rate of about 17%. Let's see if I can pronounce this one right. The next leading drug, varenicline, has about a 30% success rate, and after 6 months, patients who had been smoking for more than 10 years 80% of them, after 6 months, had maintained quitting cigarettes after their experience. Okay. And that's a study by Matthew W. Johnson, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins. So The rest of the book deals with a lot of people who have had personal stories, and a lot of them deal with traumas, but the one I wanted to pick out to kind of just talk about before I wrap this up is Patrick Metis. Patrick Metis was a man who was dying of a particularly painful form of cancer, bile duct cancer, that had already spread to his lungs. He was given two sessions taking psychedelic mushrooms, and it helped him to emotionally process the fact that he was dying and that he was not going to get better. He was not going to recover. He was going to leave this world. The experience helped him to make peace with it. The overwhelming experience of altering his conscious state helped him to articulate his feelings, and it inspired him to make the rest of his life matter. He had about a year and 5 months. He spent that time after he was able to process this, telling his family and friends how much he loved them and how thankful he was for them being in his life. Knowing he was dying, he did quit chemotherapy to maximize his comfort. And as he went into palliative care, when his condition worsened, not only the people on his floor, but his doctors tried to spend as much time as they could in the room with him. This guy had this charm about him. He had accepted his death, and he had spent the rest of his life trying to comfort others. This guy kind of turned into a weird saintly figure in a New York hospital. I'd be remiss if I didn't add that this great chapter about Patrick Metis in this book, there's this beautiful moment where during his actual experience, he has a conversation with his dead mother. They apparently had a tough relationship, and his sister-in-law who had passed, and they were close. I'd also be remiss if I didn't tell you this hilarious part where apparently he had a vision of Michelle Obama and Derek Jeter. I got another story about one time I saw Heidi Klum on a giraffe, but that's for the coffee break. So wrapping up, these stories in this book, Changing Your Mind, are all really moving, and they seem to do a great job of demonstrating that hallucinogens provide a lot more than just an aesthetic experience, a lot more than just something hippies do during college. But there's one philosophical thought that I think is relevant. Ancient philosophers, again and again, in different cultures, articulate this idea that that which is closest to us, we're often blind to. The experience of taking mushrooms, LSD, mescaline, in my own life has given me an opportunity to look at myself, my problems, my joys, my problems in different ways, most of which has resulted in a better understanding of myself and a new appreciation for sobriety once I came down. This isn't something I'm going to say like I do a whole lot now. This is pretty much every one of these experiences are in my 20s. But looking back on it, I think it's just bears worth saying that psychedelics are probably one of the only class of substances that have any real recreational value. And I'm really glad that books like this one are out there changing the way people look at not only their use, but the help they can bring to people, especially those who are suffering and going through really, really terrible things, and how it can alleviate that. So check out Michael Pollan's book, Changing Your Mind, and thank you for letting me come and kind of get a chance to talk about that. Oasis does not condone any kind of drug use. I think I've said that enough times by now. Thank you so much for your time.